This is Jim's celebration of life, marking 100 wonderful years. Jim was born at home in Verdun, Illinois, to an Irish father and a mother whose family immigrated from Czechoslovakia. This is Jim's fourth grade class picture in 1932. Can you guess which one he is? Hint, yellow arrow. When he was little, there were not any TVs or computers. He passed time with his favorite cousin, who was later killed in World War II. They loved fishing in the local creek, catching mostly catfish, playing games, and spending time on their grandfather's farm. That is where he learned to speak Czech, since his grandfather refused to learn English. Jim was an altar boy and made 5 cents per service. Funerals were a bonus of 10 cents. Another benefit of being an altar boy was when they would replace the communion wine with water when the priest wasn't looking. He also had a newspaper route during this time. During his childhood, the family didn't have any indoor plumbing. While visiting a relative in Chicago, he thought he was pretty dirty because he used the bathroom in the house. This was the first time he saw indoor plumbing. Shortly after Pearl Harbor was bombed, Jim enlisted in the Navy to serve his country. As a teenager, he was very sick and had to be hospitalized. This would have disqualified him from being enlisted. He told a little white lie in order to enlist. He told the recruiter that he really wasn't sick and that the small-town doctor who examined him didn't know what he was doing. Jim had one older brother, Tanner, and 2 identical twin sisters, Dee and Doris. Saying goodbye to his sisters before going off to war. Jim looking quite handsome in his uniform. In World War II, he was assigned to a subchaser that was protecting the tankers coming from Venezuela with fuel for the war from enemy submarines. During this time, he endured 3 hurricanes on their small ship. He was then assigned duty on a small wooden subchaser with only 24 men aboard, including a high-ranking officer. This ship was responsible for coordinating the landing on Omaha Beach in preparation of D-Day. Their mission was to sink Liberty ships to make breakwater channels for the invasion. He had a ringside view of D-Day. His duty during the invasion was to keep an eye out for enemy planes and shoot them down. Jim received a letter of thanks from President Truman. To you who answered the call of your country and served in its armed forces to bring about the total defeat of the enemy, I extend the heartfelt thanks of a grateful nation. As one of the nation's finest, you undertook the most severe task one can be called upon to perform. Because you demonstrated the fortitude, resourcefulness, and calm judgment necessary to carry out that task, we now look to you for leadership and example in further exalting our country in peace. Signed, Harry Truman. Going home on a train for leave after D-Day, someone came running through the train yelling about the atomic bomb in Japan. This signaled the end of World War II. Even after 78 years following the end of the war, these little kids that he'd just met were studying World War II and wanted to have their picture taken with him. After all this time, Jim is still proud of his service to his country. Shortly after the war ended, he met his future bride at a dance. Bells went off and he immediately knew that she was the one. As it turned out, Mary was the little girl on his paper route peering out behind her mother's skirt. Now she had grown up into a beautiful woman. They enjoyed 76 years of a wonderful, blessed marriage. Shortly after they were married, Jim worked in a coal mine for 5 years. It took him 15 minutes to travel into the mine in a small coal car. One of his jobs was to drill holes for the dynamite. After 5 years in the mine, he wanted fresh air, so he got a job as a delivery driver for Sunbeam Bakery. He would get home about 5 p.m. and get up the next morning at 1:30 a.m. to go to work. He did this Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week. In his spare time, he had fun making bread. After several years at Sunbeam, he got a job at Standard Brands as a salesman in St. Louis. He worked there for over 20 years. He left Standard Brands when an opportunity came up to lease a restaurant in a new Holiday Inn in Mitchell, South Dakota. The restaurant was very successful, even though he had never managed a restaurant before. To prepare for the ownership, he took correspondence courses in restaurant management and worked for free at a local restaurant to gain experience on his days off from Standard Brands. This picture is one of his successful campaigns when he hired a Thai chef to cook Asian food once a week. He won the Big Idea Award for this concept because at the time in Mitchell, South Dakota, not many people were familiar with Thai food. The new Asian offering was so successful that they had to open extra banquet rooms to accommodate all the extra customers. Another successful campaign was to use the baby picture of his grandson, Kenneth, as an advertisement for Kids Eat Free. He was so successful with the restaurant in the Holiday Inn, the owners would not renew his lease because they wanted it for themselves. They then became part owners at another Holiday Inn in Wilmer, Minnesota. At that time, he was elected to the board of directors of the city council. After much prayer, Jim decided that the hotel business was not where God wanted him to be. This was a blessing in disguise because they had an opportunity to buy a country kitchen in Hutchinson, Minnesota. After selling the country kitchen, they retired to Florida. He had many hobbies, one of which was gardening. Picking cherries in California. In his assisted living facility in California, Jim would continue his love of gardening from his patio. He continues to help with the gardening at his current residence at Jubilee House. Another passion of his was building things. This was to be a desk for his wife, Mary. Jim had two daughters, Connie and Linda. He also has a son-in-law, John, who he thinks of as a son. Two veterans enjoying the freebies on Veterans Day. Jim and Mary had 4 grandkids. Jennifer was the first to be born of Connie's 2 children. Then came Kenny. His grandkids enjoyed visiting Grandpa. Of course, when they visited, they had to help in the garden. Jim and Mary had 4 grandkids, 3 girls and a boy. As time went on, Jenny and Kenny grew up. Linda had 2 daughters, Hannah and Alicia. As time went on, they also grew up. When you live a long life, you can be blessed with great-grandchildren. Relaxing with first great-grandson, Colton. And then God blessed Jim with 3 additional great-grandchildren from granddaughter Jenny. And then Elisha blessed him with 3 more great-grandchildren. This is his family sending him off with a bon voyage party to Hawaii. One of the most memorable moments was when he went to visit Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Getting ready to see more of the sights in Hawaii. Photo op with Don Ho after being called up on stage to recognize his 80th birthday. Catching a flume ride on the Big Island. Romantic moment in the lush Hawaiian greenery. Jim and Mary's Titanic moment. Surprised by a birthday wish delivered by a diver in the aquarium. A bird's eye view of Kauai by helicopter. Visiting the Billy Graham Museum. This was a special place for Jim. Relaxing and enjoying a view of the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. Two youngsters standing amid a 700-year-old redwood tree in Muir Woods. 3 World War II veterans reminiscing at an air show. Elvis is in the house. Photobombing at the Wax Museum in Las Vegas. Showing a little true grit with John Wayne. It was a wonderful 76 years of marriage, and I'd do it all over again.
So many things that I had omitted that I want to recall. That the Lord has been so good to us all this time. He guided us to Hutchinson, to the place by a rainbow. Over Hutchinson, we drove into that rainbow and drove into success. He brought my wife and I closer together. I've had a great life.
Mm-hmm.
Leave it happy.
Yeah.
And I've been happy, and I am happy. And life is as good to me today as it ever was. And I praise God for it. Thank you for the earthly family that I have, my wife, my daughter Connie, my son-in-law John, all my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and many friends that I have.
Perfect.
Thank God.